2 years after the affair ended, Kang Min-jae no longer believed in ghosts. He had buried too many men, erased too many names, and survived too many wars to believe the past ever truly returned. In his world, what was finished stayed finished, or it was finished properly. That was the rule. So when his phone rang at 2:17 a.m., vibrating once on the polished mahogany desk of his penthouse office, he almost ignored it. Almost. Min-jae stood by the floor-to-ceiling window overlooking the city skyline, soul glittering beneath him like a controlled fire. 48 years old. 2 decades building an empire that operated in whispers and disappeared evidence. A lifetime learning that survival meant detachment, from emotion, from weakness, from anything that could be used against you. He adjusted the cuff of his tailored navy suit, revealing the faint edge of a tattoo disappearing beneath silk and discipline. The dragon's tail. A reminder of where he came from. The head was somewhere over his heart, buried, just like everything else he refused to feel. Power sat easily on him now. It had taken decades to earn. The phone rang again. He exhaled slowly, the kind of controlled breath that preceded violence or negotiation. Same difference, really. He answered without looking at the screen. Yes. A pause. A breath. A voice he didn't recognize, female, young, careful. Mr. Kang? No one called him that. Not on this line. Not at this hour. Who is this? I'm calling from St. Aurelian Medical Center. The voice wavered slightly. Nervous. There's a patient here who listed you as an emergency contact. Min-jae's jaw tightened. He turned slowly from the window, his reflection ghosting across the glass. That's not possible. He didn't do emergency contacts. He didn't do hospitals. He didn't exist in any system that could connect him to civilians. Another pause. Longer this time. More deliberate. She asked us to call you if anything happened. Something cold and unfamiliar settled in his chest. Something that felt dangerously close to fear. What is her name? The line crackled softly, or maybe that was just his pulse in his ears. Amara Cole. The world tilted. Min-jae's grip tightened on the phone until he heard the faint creak of expensive engineering reaching its limit. Amara. 2 years ago, she had walked out of his life with nothing but a suitcase and silence. No accusations. No demands. No explanations beyond the ones her eyes had already given him in those final weeks when she stopped touching him the same way, stopped looking at him like he was anything other than dangerous. Just one sentence spoken calmly through unshed tears: if I stay, they'll destroy us both. He had let her go because loving her had been the only weakness he could not afford. Because she was 26 and brilliant and deserved a life that didn't involve checking her car for explosives. Because every day she stayed was another day his enemies could learn what she meant to him. And in his world, what you loved became a weapon pointed at your throat. What happened to her? He asked, his voice dangerously controlled, the kind of quiet that made grown men confess to crimes they didn't commit. She collapsed earlier tonight. Exhaustion. Severe dehydration. Complications from, the caller hesitated. Complications from childbirth. The word hit him harder than any blade ever had. Time stopped. The city lights blurred. Childbirth? He heard his own voice from a distance, like he was listening to someone else speak. Yes, sir. She gave birth approximately 3 weeks ago. Min-jae closed his eyes. 3 weeks. 3 weeks she'd been a mother. 3 weeks he'd been. And the baby? The question came out rougher than he intended. A softer tone now. Careful. The tone people used when delivering news that would change everything. He's stable. Healthy. A beautiful baby boy. A son. Min-jae's hand moved to his chest, pressing against the dragon's head hidden beneath layers of fabric and scar tissue. His heart was beating too fast. Too hard. Like it was trying to escape the cage he'd built around it. Is she? He stopped. Started again. Is Amara conscious? She's resting now. But before the exhaustion became critical, she made sure we had your information. Another pause. She was very specific about what to tell you. Tell me. The doctor's voice dropped to almost a whisper, like she was delivering a secret she wasn't sure she had permission to share. She said, tell him he's the father. Tell him his name is June. And tell him I'm sorry I disappeared. Silence swallowed the room. Min-jae had ordered executions without blinking. He had negotiated peace with blood on his hands and bodies at his feet. He had stared down enemies who begged for mercy and felt nothing. But this stripped him bare. Amara had been pregnant when she left. She had been carrying his child when she walked away. She had spent 2 years alone, hiding, running, surviving, with his son. His son. The words didn't feel real. They felt like a language he'd never learned, a concept his brain couldn't process. Kang Min-jae, who controlled one of the most powerful criminal organizations in Seoul, who had killed his first man at 17, who had built an empire on ruthlessness and strategy, was a father. Where are they? He asked. His voice sounded strange. Hollow. Human. Room 812. But sir, visiting hours. I'm on my way. He ended the call. For a long moment, Min-jae stood motionless in his office, phone still in his hand, the city sprawling beneath him in ordered chaos. Then he moved. Coat. Keys. Gun, habit, not thought. He was already at the elevator when his second-in-command, Jae-sung, appeared from the security room, concern etched across his scarred face. Boss? Everything okay? Min-jae looked at him, really looked at him, and for the first time in their 15-year partnership, Jae-sung saw something he'd never seen before in Kang Min-jae's eyes. Vulnerability. Clear my schedule, Min-jae said quietly. All of it. Indefinitely. What happened? Min-jae stepped into the elevator. I just found out I have a son. The doors closed on Jae-sung's shocked expression. The drive through the sleeping city felt like moving through a dream he hadn't lived yet. Min-jae drove too fast and not fast enough. The streets blurred. The lights streaked. His mind replayed every moment with Amara in fragmented bursts. The way she'd challenged him the first time they met, unafraid, when she didn't yet know who he was. The stolen dinners in private rooms where he could pretend to be ordinary. Her laugh, genuine and bright, the kind of sound that didn't belong in his world. The night she pressed her forehead to his chest and whispered, "You don't know how to be ordinary, do you?" The morning he woke up and she was gone. She had been right. He didn't know how to be ordinary. But maybe he could learn how to be a father. If she'd let him. If it wasn't too late. St. Aurelian Medical Center rose against the pre-dawn sky, sterile and imposing. Min-jae parked illegally and didn't care. He walked through the sliding doors with the kind of presence that made the night security guard straighten reflexively. Hospitals didn't fear him. People did. The receptionist looked up. Looked at his face. Looked at the way he moved. Room 812, she said without him asking. He took the stairs because the elevator felt too slow, too confining. His footsteps echoed through the empty stairwell, and with each floor, his heart rate climbed higher. 8th floor. The hallway was quiet. Dimly lit. Sterile white walls and the soft beep of distant monitors. Room 812. Min-jae stopped outside the door. For the first time in 20 years, he hesitated. His hand hovered over the handle. On the other side of this door was the woman he'd never stopped loving. On the other side of this door was a son he'd never met. On the other side of this door, his entire life was about to change. Kang Min-jae, who had never been afraid of anything, was terrified. He opened the door. But to understand how a man like Kang Min-jae ended up standing in a hospital room at 3:47 a.m., staring at the woman who'd vanished with his child, you have to go back. Back to 2 years earlier. Back to the night they met. Back to the moment he made the mistake of believing he could control what he felt for Amara Cole. If you have stayed till this point, you are amazing. Do well to like, share and subscribe to this channel for more videos like this. She had walked into his life by accident. A charity gala. One of those carefully orchestrated events where Seoul's elite pretended philanthropy masked their networking. Min-jae attended because power required visibility, and visibility required the illusion of legitimacy. He'd been standing by the bar, bored and calculating exit strategies, when she appeared beside him. "You look like you'd rather be anywhere else," she'd said in perfect Korean, though her features suggested mixed heritage, African-American father, Korean mother, he'd later learn. He'd glanced at her. 26. Confident. Beautiful in a way that didn't require effort. A visiting art curator from New York, he'd discover. Temporary. Safe. Except nothing about Amara Cole had been safe. "I have a rule," he'd replied. "Never stay longer than necessary." "That sounds lonely." "It sounds like survival." She'd smiled then, not charmed, not intimidated. Interested. That should have been his first warning. The affair began 3 weeks later. Stolen moments in private dining rooms. Late-night conversations that stretched until dawn. Her laughter in the darkness of his penthouse when the city slept and he could pretend to be someone else. She never asked about his work. Never pushed for details about the scars or the phone calls that sent him into the night. She accepted the parts of him he could give and didn't demand the rest. That was the second warning he ignored. Because loving her had been forbidden for reasons that multiplied the longer they were together. The age gap, 22 years between them. The cultural expectations, a man in his position was supposed to marry someone approved, someone connected, someone who understood the rules. The danger, every day she stayed was another day his enemies could learn she mattered. And God, did she matter? 6 months. That's all they had. 6 months of pretending the world outside didn't exist. Then came the night everything ended. He remembered it perfectly. The way she'd stood by his window, the same window he'd been standing at when the hospital called, staring out at Seoul like she was memorizing it. "Min-jae," she'd said softly. "I have to leave." He'd been reading intelligence reports. Hadn't looked up. "Where?" "Permanently." That made him look up. She turned to face him, and he saw it immediately, the decision already made, the bags probably already packed. "They know about me," she whispered. "The Choi Syndicate. They've been watching us. Taking photos. They sent one to my apartment yesterday." Her voice cracked. "You were in it. And there was a note, 'She's beautiful.' It would be a shame if something happened." Min-jae had gone very still. "Give me their names." "No." She'd crossed to him, cupped his face with trembling hands. "If I stay, they'll destroy us both. They'll use me to control you or kill me to break you. Either way, we lose. I can protect you. You can't protect me from this." Tears slipped down her cheeks. "Your world doesn't allow love, Min-jae. It only allows leverage." He'd wanted to argue. Wanted to lock her in his fortress and eliminate every threat. But she was right. In his world, what you loved became a weapon pointed at your throat. So he'd let her go. Watched her walk out with nothing but a suitcase and the pieces of his heart she didn't know she'd taken. "If I stay, they'll destroy us both." He'd told himself it was mercy. He'd been wrong. The hospital room door opened quietly. Soft light spilled across sterile floors. The beep of monitors. The antiseptic smell that meant life barely maintained. And there, Amara lay propped against white pillows, exhaustion etched into features that were still unmistakably hers. Thinner. Older. But still the woman who'd looked at a monster and seen a man. Her eyes were closed. Beside her bed, in a clear bassinet, impossibly small beneath hospital blankets, Min-jae stopped breathing. Dark hair. Tiny fists curled against his chest. The gentle rise and fall of breath too precious to be real. June. His son. The baby stirred, and Min-jae felt something inside him crack open, something he'd thought dead, something dangerous and terrifying and completely beyond his control. Amara's eyes opened. Their gazes met across 2 years of silence. She didn't look surprised. Just tired. And sad. And relieved. You came, she whispered. Min-jae's voice was barely audible. You called. A tear slipped down her cheek. I'm sorry. I didn't know how else to, she stopped. Started again. He's yours, Min-jae. He's always been yours. He moved closer, slowly, like approaching something sacred and fragile. Something he could break. Something that could break him. Why didn't you tell me? He asked. She smiled, broken, beautiful, devastating. Because I was trying to save us both. Min-jae had held guns that felt lighter than the silence between them. Amara watched him with eyes that had seen too much, exhaustion carved into the delicate skin beneath them, her cheekbones sharper than he remembered. She'd lost weight. Too much. The kind of weight you lost running, hiding, surviving alone. But she was unbroken. Still fierce. Still her. How long have you been back in Seoul? He asked. 3 days. Her voice was hoarse. I came back because I couldn't run anymore. Because he deserves to know his father. Min-jae's gaze drifted to the bassinet. The baby, June, slept with the kind of peace Min-jae hadn't felt in decades. Small fists curled near his face. Dark lashes against golden brown skin. A miniature miracle wrapped in hospital blankets. Can I? He stopped. Started again. May I hold him? Amara nodded, something like relief softening her features. Min-jae approached slowly, each step deliberate. He'd held many things in his life, weapons, power, secrets that could topple empires. But as he looked down at his son, his hands hesitated. I don't know how, he admitted quietly. Neither did I, Amara whispered. But you learn. Carefully. He reached into the bassinet with hands that had broken bones and signed death warrants. Hands that had never trembled. Until now. June was impossibly light. Impossibly warm. Min-jae lifted him with the kind of care he'd never shown anything, cradling the baby against his chest. Supporting the head the way some instinct he didn't know he possessed instructed him to. The baby stirred. Made a small sound. Then settled. Something inside Min-jae shattered. Not broke, transformed. For 48 years, he'd built walls around himself. Brick by brick. Body by body. He'd become untouchable because being touchable meant being destroyed. But this 3-week-old child sleeping against his heart had demolished every defense in seconds. His name, Min-jae said softly, June. Why did you choose it? It means talented in Korean. Handsome. Amara's smile was fragile. I wanted him to have a name that connected him to your world, even if he never knew it. He'll know it now. Her smile faded. Min-jae. I'm not debating this, Amara. He looked at her over their son's head. You don't get to give me a child and then take him away. I'm not trying to take him away. She pushed herself up slightly, wincing. I'm trying to keep him alive. The temperature in the room dropped. Explain. She took a breath. Released it slowly. The Han Consortium knows about him. About you. About us. Min-jae's jaw tightened. The Han Consortium, old rivals, ambitious predators who'd been circling his territory for years, looking for weaknesses. They'd found one. How? I don't know. Maybe they never stopped watching after I left. Maybe someone talked. Maybe, her voice broke. It doesn't matter how. What matters is they sent someone to my apartment 2 days ago. Left a photograph of June at the playground. Ice flooded Min-jae's veins. Just the photograph? And a note. She pulled a crumpled paper from beneath her pillow with shaking hands. Beautiful child. His father's eyes. It would be tragic if he inherited his father's enemies too. Min-jae stared at the note. Then very carefully, still holding June, he set it on the bedside table. When he spoke, his voice was arctic. They made a mistake. Min-jae, there. They made a mistake, he repeated, thinking a threat would make me negotiate. Thinking a child would make me weak. He looked down at June, still sleeping peacefully, unaware of the war that had just been declared in his name. They're right about one thing, Min-jae continued quietly. He has his father's eyes. And now he has his father's protection. You can't fight them alone. I won't be alone. He met her gaze. You're staying. Both of you. At my estate. Under my security. Min-jae. This isn't a request, Amara. His tone softened slightly. Please. Let me protect you. Let me protect him. Let me, he stopped. Let me be what I should have been 2 years ago. Tears spilled down her cheeks. What if staying puts him in more danger? What if leaving gets him killed? Min-jae countered. They already know about him. Running didn't work. Hiding didn't work. So now we do what I should have done the moment you told me you were in danger. What's that? His eyes were cold fire. We make them regret ever learning his name. Amara searched his face for a long moment. Then nodded. Okay. Min-jae looked down at June one more time, this tiny human who'd turned him from an untouchable crime lord into a father in the space of one phone call. I'm here now, he whispered. And for the first time in his life, Kang Min-jae chose something more dangerous than power. He chose family. They left the hospital before dawn. Min-jae carried June while Amara walked beside him, still weak but refusing the wheelchair the nurses had insisted on. Stubborn. He'd forgotten how stubborn she could be. Or maybe he'd just missed it. The black sedan waited at the entrance, engine running, Jae-sung behind the wheel with 2 additional vehicles flanking them. Security Min-jae had called in during the 15 minutes he'd spent arranging Amara's discharge. The city was still sleeping. Seoul spread out before them in that strange liminal hour between night and morning when even a place this alive held its breath. Street lights cast orange halos through dissipating fog. A delivery truck rumbled past. Somewhere, a shopkeeper was opening their doors. The world continued, unaware that a war had just been reignited. Unaware that blood would be spilled before the week ended. Min-jae settled June into the car seat his people had installed, brand new, top safety ratings, researched and purchased in under an hour because when Kang Min-jae gave orders, the impossible became routine. Amara slid in beside their son, her hand immediately moving to rest protectively on the carrier. Min-jae took the passenger seat. Estate, he said quietly. Alert the full security detail. No one in or out without my personal authorization. Jae-sung nodded, already on his radio. They drove in silence. The estate sat 30 minutes outside Seoul's heart, hidden behind high walls and older money. Min-jae had purchased it 8 years ago, not for ostentation, but for strategy. Defensible position. Multiple exit routes. Enough land that threats could be seen coming. The iron gates opened as they approached. Inside, the transformation had already begun. Men in dark suits stood at intervals along the driveway. Security cameras that hadn't been active yesterday now tracked their approach. The perimeter lights had been upgraded, motion sensors, blind spot elimination, overlapping fields of coverage. Min-jae had made one phone call. His people had made it a fortress. Amara stared out the window, her face pale. This is how you live, she whispered. This is how I survive, he corrected. Now it's how we survive. Inside, the estate was traditional Korean architecture married to modern security, beautiful and brutal in equal measure. Dark wood. Clean lines. Technology hidden in plain sight. A nursery had been prepared on the second floor. Min-jae hadn't asked for it specifically, but his staff knew him well enough to anticipate. Crib. Changing table. Monitors. Everything a child might need, assembled while he'd been at the hospital. Amara stood in the doorway, overwhelmed. You did all this in 3 hours? I have efficient people. You have terrifying people. Yes. He didn't apologize for it. That's why June will be safe here. She turned to face him, still holding their sleeping son. Min-jae, you need to understand what we're dealing with. The Han Consortium isn't just interested in June because he's your child. They're interested because, she stopped. Steadied herself. Because having leverage over you means controlling access to the ports. The shipping routes. The distribution networks. You're the gatekeeper to half of Seoul's underground economy. I'm aware. A child makes you vulnerable. A child makes me lethal, he corrected quietly. There's a difference. She searched his face. They won't just threaten him, Min-jae. They'll do nothing, he interrupted, because they'll be dead before they get close enough to try. The certainty in his voice should have been reassuring. Instead, it sounded like a promise written in blood. Jae-sung appeared in the doorway. Boss. We've got confirmation. Min-jae stepped into the hallway, leaving Amara with June. Talk. Han Consortium made 3 moves in the last 6 hours. Pulled surveillance teams from their usual positions. Redirected them here. And, Jae-sung's expression darkened. They put a bounty out. Not on you. On information about the child. Min-jae's hands curled into fists. How much? 50 million won. They want to know everything. Where he sleeps. Who protects him. When he's most vulnerable. The number didn't matter. The intent did. They're already moving, Min-jae said. Yes, sir. For a long moment, Min-jae stood in the hallway of his home, his fortress, with his son sleeping 1 room away and enemies circling in the dark. Then he smiled. It wasn't a pleasant smile. Good, he said softly. Let them come. Let them think a child makes me weak. Let them believe they've found the crack in my armor. Boss? Min-jae turned, his eyes cold and certain. No one touches what's mine. Not the Han Consortium. Not anyone. He straightened his suit jacket. Call the council. Every family head we have alliance with. I want a meeting. Tonight. What are we telling them? That the rules just changed. Min-jae glanced back toward the nursery. And anyone who threatens my son will learn why my name is still spoken in whispers. Jae-sung nodded and disappeared. Min-jae returned to the nursery doorway. Amara had settled June in the crib and was standing over him, one hand resting on the rail. You heard? Min-jae asked quietly. Yes. Are you afraid? She looked at him, really looked at him, and he saw the woman who'd challenged him in a bar 2 years ago. The woman who'd loved a monster and survived. I'm terrified, she admitted. But I'm also relieved. Why? Because for the first time since I found out I was pregnant, I'm not alone. Min-jae crossed to her. Wrapped his arms around her from behind. Rested his chin on her shoulder as they both watched their son sleep. You're not alone, he confirmed. And neither is he. Outside, Seoul woke to morning light. Inside, a war began. The war room was in the basement. Concrete walls. No windows. A single table surrounded by men who'd survived decades in a world where survival was never guaranteed. These were Min-jae's inner circle, 7 family heads who controlled different sectors of his organization. Men who'd bled with him. Killed for him. Men he trusted as much as he trusted anyone. Which was barely at all. But they were here. At dawn. Because when Kang Min-jae called a meeting, you came. Jae-sung stood at the head of the table, pulling up surveillance photos on the screen. The Han Consortium has been consolidating power for 18 months, he began. Since Park Han-suk took over after his father's death. Younger. More ambitious. More reckless. A photo appeared, Park Han-suk, 34, educated in London, dangerous in ways his traditional father never was. He's been testing our borders, Jae-sung continued. Small provocations. Territory disputes. Nothing worth a full response. Until now. Another photo. The note left at Amara's apartment. The room went silent. He knows about the child, Min-jae said quietly. And now he's made it personal. Why? This from Kwon Dae-young, head of their financial operations. Practical. Calculating. What does he gain from threatening a baby? Min-jae leaned back in his chair. Everything. He nodded to Jae-sung, who pulled up the next slide, organizational charts, power structures, alliance networks. Our strength has always been stability, Min-jae explained. For 20 years, I've maintained balance. No unnecessary wars. No emotional decisions. No weaknesses. He paused. Han-suk sees my son as proof that I'd become weak. Sentimental. Vulnerable. And he's right, said Choi Min-ho, head of enforcement. Blunt. Loyal. You are vulnerable now. Several men shifted uncomfortably. Min-jae didn't flinch. Yes, he agreed. I am. So what's the play? Kwon pressed. We can't negotiate. Can't show weakness. But a direct war costs us. Han-suk doesn't want war, Jae-sung interrupted. He wants leverage. A new document appeared on screen, intelligence intercepts, encrypted communications their people had cracked. He's been reaching out to our allies. Suggesting that Min-jae's judgment is compromised. That a man with a child can't lead objectively. That protecting his son will cost us territory, profit, power. Jae-sung's jaw tightened. He's offering them better terms if they switch allegiance. And? Min-jae asked. 3 families are listening. The room erupted. Voices overlapping. Anger. Disbelief. Demands for names. Min-jae raised one hand. Silence fell immediately. The child is not a weakness, he said quietly. Dangerously. The child is a line in the sand. He stood, hands flat on the table. Han-suk thinks threatening my son will make me retreat. Make me negotiate from fear. He's wrong. What's the alternative? Choi demanded. Full assault? We'd win, but the collateral. The alternative, Min-jae interrupted, is that we stop playing defense. He turned to the screen, where Park Han-suk's face stared back at them. He wants to test whether fatherhood has made me soft. So we give him his answer. Min-jae's voice dropped to something arctic. Swiftly. Decisively. Permanently. Upstairs, Amara sat in the nursery rocking chair, June asleep in her arms. She'd heard the cars arrive. Heard the heavy footsteps descending to the basement. Heard the muffled voices through the floor. She knew what was being discussed. War. Because of her. Because she'd come back. Because she'd been selfish enough to want June to know his father. The door opened quietly. Min-jae entered, loosening his tie. You should be resting, he said. I can't rest knowing what's happening downstairs. He crossed to her, knelt beside the chair so they were eye level. Amara. This is my fault. Her voice cracked. I brought this to your door. I put him in danger. I should have. Stop. His hand covered hers where it rested on June's back. The only people at fault are the ones threatening our son. Not you. Never you. But if I hadn't. If you hadn't come back, I wouldn't have known I had a son. His thumb traced circles on her knuckles. I wouldn't have known what I was living for. what I was building for. He looked at June. He's not a complication, Amara. He's the point. She searched his face, finding something she'd never seen before in Kang Min-jae. Purpose beyond power. What happens now? She whispered. Now I do what I do best. He stood, pressed a kiss to June's head. I eliminate threats. Min-jae. Trust me. She wanted to. God, she wanted to. But trust required believing violence could solve this. That blood could protect what love had created. The surveillance alert came at 3:47 p.m. Jae-sung's voice over the intercom, controlled but urgent. Boss. East Perimeter. 4 vehicles. Han Consortium plates. Min-jae was already moving. In the security room, monitors showed the convoy approaching slowly. Not attacking. Announcing. How close? Min-jae demanded. Half a kilometer. Just outside our boundary. Close enough to be seen. Far enough to avoid direct engagement. They're not here to fight, Kwon observed. No, Min-jae agreed. They're here to watch. The vehicles stopped. Idled. Making their presence known. We know where you live. We know your son is here. We can reach you anytime we want. The message was clear. Min-jae watched the monitors in silence. Jaw tight. Eyes calculating. Then he smiled, cold, certain, terrifying. Jae-sung. Get me everything on Park Han-suk's movements for the last month. Every location. Every meeting. Every vulnerability. Yes, sir. And send word to the 3 families who are listening to his offer. Min-jae's voice dropped. Tell them they have 24 hours to reaffirm their loyalty. Or they'll learn what happens to people who bet against me. He turned from the monitors. The vehicles outside could watch all they wanted. What they'd see next would be a lesson. Wars weren't won by who had more men. They were won by who was willing to go further. And Kang Min-jae, father, protector, monster, had just discovered exactly how far he was willing to go. The estate transformed overnight. Motion sensors multiplied. Guard rotations doubled. Every entrance, visible and hidden, now required biometric clearance. Min-jae walked the perimeter at dawn, checking blind spots his security chief had already checked 3 times. Trust, but verify. Old habits. Survival instincts. The mindset that had kept him alive for 48 years. Except now it wasn't just about him anymore. He paused at the garden gate, watching the sun crest over Seoul in the distance. Beautiful. Deceptive. A city that looked peaceful in morning light but bled violence after dark. His phone buzzed. Security update. All clear. For now. Inside, the nursery was warm with filtered sunlight. Amara sat cross-legged on the floor, talking to June in that soft, sing-song voice mothers seemed born knowing. The baby watched her with wide, serious eyes, Min-jae's eyes, everyone kept saying, tracking her movements with intense focus. Min-jae stood in the doorway, watching. He didn't know how to be part of this scene. Didn't know where he fit in this tableau of gentleness. You can come in, Amara said without looking up. You're not interrupting. He entered slowly, uncertain. Sat on the floor beside her, Kang Min-jae, who commanded rooms with presence, now trying to figure out how to sit on a nursery floor without looking ridiculous. June's gaze shifted to him. Studied. Assessed. He's judging me, Min-jae said. He's learning you. Amara smiled. Babies are excellent observers. They know who's comfortable and who's faking it. I'm not faking anything. You're terrified. He couldn't argue with that. Amara reached over, took his hand, placed it on June's small chest. The baby's heartbeat fluttered against his palm, rapid, fragile, impossibly precious. He's yours, she whispered. You don't have to perform for him. You just have to be here. Min-jae swallowed hard. Being here, present, vulnerable, open, was harder than any negotiation he'd ever conducted. June made a small sound. His tiny hand wrapped around Min-jae's finger with surprising strength. Something inside him cracked wider. I don't know how to do this, he admitted. Do what? Be soft. Be gentle. He stopped. Be someone he won't be afraid of. Amara turned to face him fully. Min-jae, he won't fear you because of what you do. He'll fear you if you're absent. If you choose violence over him. Her voice was gentle but firm. That's the choice you're facing. Not whether to protect him, that's never been a question. But how you protect him. Whether you build walls so high he grows up in a prison. Or whether you find another way. There is no other way. There's always another way. Not in my world. Then maybe, she hesitated. Maybe it's time to leave your world behind. The suggestion hung between them like a grenade with the pin pulled. Min-jae stood abruptly. Paced to the window. You want me to walk away? From everything I built? Everything I am? I want you to choose what matters more. Amara's voice followed him. Power? Or him? Keeping power is protecting him. Is it? She stood too, came to him. Or is it guaranteeing he grows up surrounded by violence? Learning that problems are solved with blood? Watching his father become the thing you swore you'd protect him from? Min-jae's jaw clenched. You don't understand. I understand perfectly. Her eyes flashed. I understand that Park Han-suk wants to test you. That your allies are wavering. That staying means war. But I also understand that war means June grows up in a fortress, guarded by killers, never knowing normal. Never knowing safe. She touched his face. Is that the life you want for him? I want him alive, Min-jae said roughly. Everything else is negotiable. Even his childhood? His innocence? His chance to be something other than Kang Min-jae's son? The words hit harder than he expected. Before he could respond, his phone buzzed. Then again. Urgent pattern. Jae-sung's voice through the speaker, controlled but tense. Boss. Perimeter breach. East Gate. They left something. The package sat in the middle of the driveway, placed with precision during the 3-minute gap in camera coverage Min-jae hadn't known existed. Small. Black. Wrapped with a white ribbon. Don't touch it, Min-jae ordered. The bomb squad he kept on retainer approached carefully. Scanned. Tested. Finally, it's clean, sir. No explosives. No biologicals. Min-jae nodded. They opened it remotely anyway. Inside, a child's silver rattle. Expensive. Engraved. And a note in elegant script. Every child deserves to grow up knowing their family. We look forward to meeting him. Min-jae stared at the message. Not a threat. Worse. An invitation. They were telling him they could reach June anytime. That walls and guards meant nothing. That the only way to truly protect his son was to negotiate. To bend. To break. Behind him, Amara stood in the doorway, June in her arms. She'd seen the package. Read the note over his shoulder. Min-jae. Get inside, he said quietly. We need to talk about. Inside, he repeated. Now. She retreated, hurt and fear mixing in her expression. Min-jae stood alone in his driveway, staring at the rattle that represented everything he could lose. The choice Amara had given him crystallized into sharp focus. Stay and fight, guarantee violence, possibly win, possibly lose everything. Or leave, abandon power, accept exile, give June a chance at normal. But men like Kang Min-jae didn't get normal. And enemies like Park Han-suk didn't forgive retreat. He picked up the rattle. Felt its weight. Then crushed it in his fist until silver bent and broke. Jae-sung, he said into his phone. Tell the families I want a meeting. All of them. Tomorrow night. What are we discussing, boss? Min-jae looked back at his house, at the window where he could see Amara's silhouette holding their son. How far I'm willing to go. The attack came at 11:47 p.m. Not at the gates. Not at the perimeter. Through the sewage system, an access tunnel Min-jae's people had swept twice, but the Han consortium had been mapping for weeks. The first alarm was silent. A pressure sensor tripping in the basement level. Then motion detection. Then thermal imaging showing 8 heat signatures moving through corridors that should have been empty. Jae-sung burst into Min-jae's office without knocking. Boss. We have intrusion. Basement level. 8 hostiles. Armed. Min-jae was already moving. He'd been dressed for this since the package arrived. Black tactical gear. Sidearm. The kind of preparation that came from decades of expecting betrayal. Amara and June, he demanded. Safe room. Sealed. 4 guards. Not enough. Pull 2 more from the perimeter. That leaves us exposed. Do it. Min-jae took the stairs 3 at a time, Jae-sung and 4 of his best men behind him. They moved with the synchronization of soldiers who'd fought together, bled together, survived together. The basement corridor was concrete and fluorescent lighting. Surveillance showed the intruders moving methodically, not toward the safe room, but toward the main house. Toward the nursery. They didn't know June had been moved. Good. Split up, Min-jae ordered. Kwon, take north corridor. Choi, secure the stairwell. Jae-sung, you're with me. They separated. Min-jae moved through the shadows like violence with a purpose. Silent. Controlled. The man who'd survived 50 years in this world by being better at darkness than anyone who challenged him. He rounded the corner. Found 3 of them trying to bypass the elevator's security panel. They saw him a half-second too late. Min-jae didn't hesitate. The first man went down with a bullet between the eyes before he could raise his weapon. The second managed to get a shot off, missed, panic making him sloppy. Min-jae put 2 rounds in his chest. The third tried to run. Jae-sung caught him. Dragged him back. Slammed him against the wall hard enough to crack concrete. Where's the rest of your team? Min-jae asked quietly. The man spat blood. Said nothing. Min-jae pressed his gun to the man's kneecap. Last chance. You're already dead, the man gasped. Han-suk knows you can't protect him forever. The child makes you. Min-jae pulled the trigger. The man screamed. Collapsed. The child makes me lethal, Min-jae corrected. Remember that in the hospital. Jae-sung's radio crackled. Boss. North corridor. 5 hostiles moving toward the west stairwell. Kwon's engaged. Gunfire erupted somewhere above them. Min-jae was already running. He found Kwon pinned down behind an overturned desk, 3 bodies already cooling on the floor, 2 more hostiles firing from behind cover. Min-jae didn't announce himself. He came from their blind side. 2 shots. 2 bodies. Kwon looked up, breathing hard. Thanks, boss. Get upstairs. Make sure no one reaches the 2nd floor. What about you? I'm finishing this. More gunfire from the east wing. Choi's voice on the radio, we've got them boxed in. Boiler room. 3 remaining. Hold position, Min-jae ordered. I'm coming to you. The boiler room was hot. Claustrophobic. Industrial pipes and shadows and the smell of oil and desperation. 3 men with automatic weapons positioned behind machinery. Choi and his team blocking the only exit. Min-jae entered through the maintenance hatch they'd forgotten existed. Drop your weapons, he said quietly. They spun. Raised their guns. But they hesitated. Because standing before them wasn't just Kang Min-jae, crime boss. It was Kang Min-jae, father. A man with nothing left to lose and everything to protect. You came for my son, Min-jae continued, his voice arctic. You broke into my home. Threatened my family. For what? A bounty? Orders from Park Han-suk? We're just, one began. You're already dead, Min-jae interrupted. The question is whether you die here, or in a hospital where you can deliver a message. What message? The man managed. Min-jae stepped closer. That I'm not fighting for territory anymore. I'm not fighting for power or profit or pride. He let them see the cold certainty in his eyes. I'm fighting for my son. And a man protecting his child doesn't negotiate. He doesn't compromise. He eradicates. The lead man swallowed hard. Han-suk will send more. Let him. Min-jae's smile was terrifying. Every man he sends will learn the same lesson. You don't threaten what belongs to me. He fired once. The bullet took the man's gun hand at the wrist. The scream echoed off concrete. That's for entering my home, Min-jae said. Second shot. The man's shoulder. That's for threatening my son. The man collapsed, gasping. Min-jae knelt beside him. And this, he grabbed the man's collar, forced him to meet his eyes. This is the message you'll deliver to Park Han-suk, I'm coming for him. Not his organization. Not his territory. Him. And when I find him, he'll learn what happens when you cross the line. He stood. Nodded to Choi. Get him medical attention. Make sure he survives long enough to talk. The others? Min-jae looked at the two remaining hostiles, frozen behind their cover. They'll spread the word themselves. He walked out. Dawn broke over the estate. Emergency services had been called, official story, attempted robbery, suspects apprehended. Money changed hands. Reports would be filed and forgotten. Min-jae stood in the hallway outside the safe room, covered in blood that wasn't his, hands shaking from adrenaline finally wearing off. The door opened. Amara emerged, June asleep in her arms. She saw him. Saw the blood. The exhaustion. The violence still written across his face. Is it over? She whispered. For tonight. She searched his eyes. What did you do? What I had to. He reached for June, then stopped himself. I should clean up first. But Amara stepped closer. Let him hold his son despite the blood. He needs to know you protected him, she said softly. Min-jae cradled June, feeling impossibly light and impossibly heavy at the same time. 8 men had come for his child. 8 men had learned what happened when you made Kang Min-jae choose between power and family. Power would always lose. It's not over, he said quietly. Han-suk will retaliate. I know. This war, it's just beginning. Amara nodded. Then we fight it together. Outside, Seoul woke to another day. Inside, a father held his son and prepared for the war that would define them both. Park Han-suk received the message at dawn. A single photograph, 8 body bags lined up outside Min-jae's estate. And beneath it, typed in clinical precision, come discuss terms. Alone. Or I come for you. The meeting was set for midnight. Neutral ground, an abandoned warehouse on the Han River, equidistant from both territories. The kind of place where wars ended or escalated beyond return. Han-suk arrived with 20 men. Min-jae came with 5. The imbalance should have been intimidating. It wasn't. They faced each other across 50 feet of empty concrete, floodlights casting harsh shadows, the river churning black beyond the open loading doors. Park Han-suk was younger than Min-jae by 14 years. Educated. Ambitious. Wearing a designer suit like armor. But standing across from Kang Min-jae, face carved by violence, eyes empty of everything except purpose, he understood why men still whispered the name. You killed 8 of my men, Hansuk said. You sent them to kidnap my son, Min-jae replied. I showed restraint. I let 3 survive. Restraint? Hansuk laughed, but it sounded forced. You crippled them. Sent 1 back missing a hand. He still has 1 left to deliver messages. Min-jae stepped forward. His men didn't follow, they didn't need to. You wanted to test whether fatherhood made me weak. Whether a child would compromise my judgment. Whether I'd negotiate from fear. And you learned the answer. Min-jae's voice dropped to something arctic. A man protecting his empire weighs costs and benefits. Calculates acceptable losses. Negotiates when strategic. He stopped 5 feet from Hansuk. But a man protecting his child? Min-jae's eyes were void of mercy. He burns the world down and asks no one's permission. Hansuk's jaw tightened. His hand drifted toward his jacket. 20 guns cocked in response, but not aimed at Min-jae. Aimed at Hansuk. His own men. The young boss's face went pale. What? Did you think loyalty was free? Min-jae asked quietly. That your men followed you because of respect? Fear? He smiled without warmth. I've been buying your inner circle for 3 months. Waiting for you to give me a reason. Hansuk looked around wildly. Saw the truth in his soldiers' faces. The ones who wouldn't meet his eyes. Betrayal. Complete. Surgical. This is about more than territory now, Hansuk said desperately. Kill me, and the other families. The other families, Min-jae interrupted, received a very clear message this morning. The 3 who were listening to your offers? They're now listening to me. The ones who stayed loyal? They've been rewarded. He pulled out his phone. Showed Hansuk a photograph. The consortium's shipping manifests. Financial records. Blackmail material Min-jae's people had been collecting for years. I could destroy your organization without killing you, Min-jae continued. Expose your deals. Your debts. Your indiscretions. Watch you crumble from the inside. Hansuk's breathing was shallow. Then why this meeting? Because you mentioned my son. Min-jae's voice went dead quiet. You sent men to take him. You left a gift at my home. You crossed a line that doesn't get uncrossed. He nodded to Jae-sung. A laptop was placed on a crate between them. Surveillance footage playing on loop. The attack on Min-jae's estate. The men moving through corridors. The moment they reached the nursery, empty, but they didn't know that. The intent was clear. Blood for blood, Min-jae said. That's the old law. You spilled mine. Now I spill yours. Wait, Hansuk raised his hands. We can negotiate. Territory. Money. Anything? There's nothing you have that I want, Min-jae cut him off. Except your word that no one, threatens my family again. Hansuk grabbed at the lifeline. Yes. Yes, you have it. My word. We'll sign a treaty. Blood oath. Whatever you. I don't want your word. Min-jae pulled his gun. I want your example. The shot echoed across the warehouse. Hansuk collapsed, clutching his leg, screaming. Min-jae stood over him. That's for threatening my son. That's for sending men into my home. That's for making me choose between mercy and protection. He aimed again. Wait. Hansuk gasped. Please. I'll disappear. Leave Seoul. You'll never. You're right. I won't. The second shot was precise. Surgical. Non-lethal but devastating. Hansuk would live. He'd walk again, eventually. But he'd never be the same. And everyone would know why. Min-jae holstered his weapon. Looked at Hansuk's men, his men now. Take him to a hospital. Make sure he survives. His voice carried absolute authority. Then spread the word, the consortium is dissolved. Its territories are absorbed. Its debts are forgiven. Its soldiers are offered positions in my organization, if they swear loyalty. He turned to leave, then paused. And make sure Park Han-suk understands, he lives because I chose mercy. Because my son will grow up knowing his father isn't a murderer unless absolutely necessary. Min-jae's eyes were cold fire. But if anyone, threatens my family again, mercy ends. Permanently. The drive back was silent. Min-jae sat in the back seat, hands still steady despite everything, watching Seoul pass by in neon and shadow. Jae-sung finally spoke. It's over, boss. The war. The consortium. All of it. For now. You think someone else will? There's always someone else. Min-jae's voice was tired. But they'll think twice now. They'll remember what happened when someone touched my son. They pulled through the estate gates. The house was lit. Secure. Home. Inside, Amara waited in the living room. June asleep in the bassinet beside her. She looked up when Min-jae entered. Searched his face. Is it done? It's done. Did you? He's alive. Broken, but alive. Min-jae crossed to the bassinet. Looked down at his sleeping son. I wanted him dead. Every instinct, every rule I've lived by said to finish it. But you didn't. No. He touched June's small hand. Because I want him to grow up knowing his father chose to be better. That violence was the last resort, not the first. He looked at Amara. You were right. The kind of man I am matters more than the kind of boss I am. She stood. Wrapped her arms around him. What did it cost? She whispered. Min-jae was silent for a long moment. 2 of my men injured. 1 seriously. 15 consortium soldiers dead or hospitalized. 3 families now indebted to me. 1 enemy crippled. He pulled back, met her eyes. And whatever part of me still believed I could protect my son without becoming a monster. You're not a monster. I'm something. He looked at June again. Something between what I was and what he needs me to be. Amara kissed him softly. That's called being human. Outside, dawn broke over Seoul. The war was over. But Kang Min-jae, father, protector, survivor, knew peace was always temporary. So he would cherish it while it lasted. And prepare for when it didn't. 3 days after the war ended, Min-jae woke to sunlight streaming through curtains he never used to open. For 48 years, he preferred darkness. Control. The kind of environment where threats were visible and weaknesses stayed hidden. But Amara had opened the curtains that first morning after the confrontation, and he'd let them stay open. Small concession. Seismic shift. He lay still for a moment, listening. The house was quiet but not empty, the kind of quiet that meant life, not absence. Somewhere downstairs, he heard soft footsteps. The faint sound of Amara humming. The world continuing despite everything that had tried to stop it. He rose. Dressed simply, no suit, no armor. Just clothes. Another small thing. Another earthquake. He found them in the garden. Amara sat on a blanket in the morning sun, June on his back beside her, staring up at tree branches swaying in the breeze. She was reading aloud from a book, something about a bear and a forest, her voice gentle and unhurried. Min-jae stood in the doorway, watching. This scene. This impossible, ordinary, precious scene. 2 weeks ago, he'd been alone. Powerful. Untouchable. Empty. Amara looked up. Smiled. You're awake. I am. Join us? He crossed the garden. Sat on the blanket. June's gaze tracked him, serious and assessing, always assessing, this child who carried his eyes and his intensity. Does he ever just relax? Min-jae asked. He's your son, Amara said fondly. Relaxation isn't in his vocabulary yet. Min-jae reached out tentatively. Let June wrap tiny fingers around his thumb with that surprising infant strength. Something in his chest loosened. I've been thinking, he said quietly. About? Everything. He watched June's small chest rise and fall. What I almost lost. What I was willing to do to keep it. What kind of life I'm offering him. Amara set down her book. Min-jae. Let me finish. He looked at her. 2 years ago, I let you walk away because I thought loving you was selfish. Dangerous. That keeping you meant destroying you. You were trying to protect me. I was trying to protect myself, he corrected. From feeling. From needing. From becoming someone who could be hurt. He paused. But then you called. And I saw him. And I realized I'd been protecting the wrong thing. Amara's eyes glistened. What are you saying? Min-jae took her hand. I'm saying stay. Not hidden. Not temporary. Not as some secret I keep from the world. His voice was steady. Certain. Stay as my family. Openly. Permanently. Let me be what I should have been from the beginning. Min-jae, your world. My world adjusts. His grip tightened. I've spent 20 years making everyone else adapt to my rules. Now I adapt to what matters. And what matters? He looked at June. Then at her. This. You. Him. The life we could build if I'm brave enough to choose it. Tears spilled down her cheeks. It won't be easy. People will talk. Question. Judge. Let them. He brushed away her tears. I've spent my life being feared. Maybe it's time to be something else. What? Human. He smiled, small, genuine, vulnerable. A father. A partner. Someone who chooses love even when it's dangerous. Especially when it's dangerous. Amara searched his face. You're sure? I've never been more sure of anything. She kissed him. Soft. Promise-filled. June made a sound between them, not quite a cry, not quite a laugh. Demanding attention in the way only babies could. They broke apart, looking down at him. He's going to be difficult, Amara said. He's my son. Of course he is. He'll challenge everything. Question everything. Push every boundary. Good. Min-jae lifted June carefully, cradled him against his chest. Let him challenge. Let him question. Let him become whoever he's meant to be, not whoever I try to make him. He stood, June in his arms, Amara beside him. Together, they looked out over the garden. Over the walls. Over Seoul sprawling in the distance, the city that had made him, broken him, and now watched as he chose something it never taught him to want. Family. Power isn't what I thought it was, Min-jae said quietly. What is it? He looked at his son. At the woman who'd given him this impossible gift. This. Holding him and knowing I'd burn the world down to keep him safe. Standing here with you and choosing to be vulnerable because the alternative is being alone. He paused. Real power isn't making people fear you. It's having something worth protecting and being strong enough to protect it. Amara leaned against him. So what now? Now? Min-jae smiled. Now we live. We raise our son. We build something that lasts longer than territory or reputation or fear. And your enemies? We'll learn that Kang Min-jae is no longer a man fighting for power. His voice was quiet steel. He's a father. And fathers don't negotiate with threats. They eliminate them. June yawned. Settled deeper into Min-jae's arms with complete trust. The kind of trust Min-jae had never allowed himself to feel. The kind of trust he would spend the rest of his life earning. That night, after June was asleep and the house was quiet, Min-jae stood at the window, his old position, his old habit. But everything was different now. Amara joined him. Slipped her hand into his. "No regrets?" she asked. He thought about it. Really thought. About the life he'd lived. The man he'd been. The isolation he'd called strength. Then he thought about the baby sleeping upstairs. The woman beside him. The future he'd never let himself imagine. "No regrets," he said. And meant it. Outside, Seoul glittered, dangerous and beautiful and alive. Inside, Kang Min-jae had finally found what he'd been fighting for all along. Not power. Not fear. Not control. Just this. A family. A choice. A chance to be something more than the sum of his scars. And for the first time in 48 years, he believed he might actually deserve it. 2 years after their secret affair ended, the Korean Mafia boss got a call that changed everything. Now, standing in his home with his son in his arms and the woman he loved by his side, Kang Min-jae understood the truth: the most dangerous thing a powerful man could do wasn't building an empire. It was choosing to love. And he'd never been more dangerous, or more alive. Thank you for watching this video. Do well to like, share and subscribe to this channel for more videos like this.